Something that's crazy to me about your story too is this surprised me a ton. Is it true that you discovered Eminem? Is that true?
Yeah. We're going to tell the story because I don't really ever get to tell the story.
Please do.
The real story. Okay. But while I was working on the record, I got a phone call from a friend of mine, a DJ named DJ Cassidy Hoban, not DJ Cassidy, the rapper, but Cassidy Hoban, who I had grown up with. And he said, "What are you doing right now?" I said, "I'm working on this album." And he was like, "You got to leave right now. You got to come right now to this place." And I was like, "What is it?" And he's like, "I'm DJing this freestyle battle in Inglewood at the Proud Bird on Century Boulevard. You have to come down here and you have to see this kid." And so I was like, "Oh man, I'm going to get like fired. I'm supposed to like not take my eyes off the reels." Like it was like some like I was in charge of making sure that these 2-inch reels did not go missing. I mean, to the point that like I would meet the head of business affairs in like the vault of the bank building Interscope was at. And like they would like switch out the reels every day. Like there was like a lot of security around it. And it was like, I was told like drive from Westwood to Silver Lake, but don't take any main streets. Like, you know, like it was a lot of security, right, around this thing. And as an 18-year-old kid, you're like, this is the coolest thing ever, right? Sure. You know, like death row's chasing me, you know, whatever. But I played hooky. I left because Cassidy was like dead serious. And I went down to this freestyle contest in Inglewood and I walked in and I proceeded to watch Eminem in this freestyle battle, you know, 8 Mile-esque, right? Like the movie, right?
Yeah.
And it was the Rap Sheet Rap Olympics. And he was competing in it. And it was like the semifinals. And M was like, you know, saying crazy things like, "Don't make my facial tissue a racial issue." Like all this like crazy shit that was like mind blowing. And so I went up to, he lost in the finals. And then M was pacing backstage, kind of like muttering on his breath, kind of like angry, teared up a little bit. And I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, I work at Interscope. I do A&R, floater, but whatever."
You're an A&R.
A&R. And he introduced me to his manager at the time, a guy named Mark Kempf. It wasn't Paul. Paul was there too, but Paul was M's lawyer. Like,
oh wow,
he wasn't his manager, and I'd just become his lawyer as well. And so I went up to M and Mark Kempf. Mark Kempf gave me this sampler cassette, Slim Shady EP sampler cassette.
That's crazy.
And I drove home with Aristotle and Dean in the car, and it popped the cassette into my car, and we just like literally drove home with our fucking jaws on the ground. Like I had never heard anything like it in my whole life. And then I got a phone call, basically that they were like, "M's coming into town. Can you get him a meeting at Interscope?" Said, "I'll see what I can do." He said, "You should come hang, whatever. We're going to be at the radio station, listen to us at the radio. You know, we'll be on Power 106 on Friday night. And then we're going up to the Wake Up Show on Saturday night." So I went to Tom Wally's office and I tried to get them to take a meeting. And I was basically told no.
Wow.
And so in a last ditch effort, I took the cassette and I went over to Jimmy's office. Now the thing is, Jimmy and Tom weren't like super tight.
Okay.
There was kind of, and I didn't know at the time. I literally had no idea at the time. I was too young to understand this. But in retrospect, I was told that there was kind of like a little bit of like a battle. Like there was Tom and Jimmy had a little bit of a power struggle. And like you were either Tom's guy or you were Jimmy's guy. And so I was one of Tom's guys. So, but I went over to Jimmy's office. And when I walked in there, my best friend, Dean, was sitting at the assistant's desk because Jimmy's first assistant, a guy named Evan Strauss, was on his honeymoon. And so Jimmy's second assistant, a guy named Scott Igo, was sitting in as the first assistant. So for the second assistant, they pulled a kid out of the mailroom. And so my best friend, who had been pulled out of the mailroom, to temp on Jimmy's assistant desk. And I was like, "Yo, Dean, put this tape in Jimmy's bag." And he's like, no, I'm going to get in trouble. And I was like, "Dude, come on, just do it. If anybody says anything, you say it was me. Just put it in his bag." And Jimmy had a cassette tape. He had like a satchel that he would take home every weekend. And A&R guys would come in there and they'd drop cassette demo tapes in there they wanted Jimmy to listen to. And they'd put it in there and they'd take it home and he'd listen to it whenever he would listen to it. I don't know when he would listen to it, but when he would listen to them. And so I basically forced the tape into the bag. And I told Dean, if they say anything, you can blame it on me. Right? I mean, it was kind of like a last-ditch effort at this point. Because I knew if this didn't happen, Eminem was going to sign with Loud Records. I knew it. Okay? Friday night comes, M's up at Power 106, even on the radio at Power 106, because I recorded it. They're like, Steve Rifkin, if you're listening, Eminem, Loud Records, there was no thought about Interscope whatsoever, right? Saturday morning, I get a page on my pager. This is what year it was. 911, Dean's number. Called Dean. I'm like, what's up? And he's like, Dre and Jimmy heard the tape. Is Eminem in town? I was like, yeah, he was at Power 106 last night. We're going up to the Wake Up Show tonight. Tell him to listen. They want to set up a meeting. I was like, cool, I'll make it happen. Let me connect you. So I connected them with M's people, set up a meeting for Monday. The M came in and they struck a deal.